Live from Alachua, Florida, I'm Amrita Kaylee.
And I'm Namamrita. Welcome to Nectar Talks, from the heart of New Ramanreti, the largest Hare Krishna community in North America and the home of thousands of Bhakti Yoga practitioners.
In our ongoing interviews, we dig deep into our search for loving connections with Krishna and each other.
With you, we hope to uncover the real-life stories and inner journeys of our vibrant community of friends and special guests.
Like bees searching for nectar, we seek to extract pearls of wisdom from how they live their lives and the lessons they can impart to us and our listeners.
If you're seeking nectar, look no further.
All right, let's get started. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to Nectar Talks. We're on episode 9, and we're so excited about tonight's special guest, who I will let my good friend Namamrita introduce in just a moment. But before we do that, I just wanted to say thank you all so much for your participation in the program. It has been a huge source of nectar for us on the team, and a source of connection. And how special is that, considering the year that we've had, where a lot of us feel very distant from each other physically. We might not see each other as often, even if we live in the same town. But here we are getting to hear some inside stories and some really powerful personal realizations from friends who we're getting closer to because of this opportunity. So thank you so much. And I'll turn it over to you, Namamrita, after I say Hare Krishna to everyone who's here. Good evening.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for that, Amrita Kaylee. It's nice to see you. And yes, we are so honored to welcome Vegavati Prabhu today on our show. She is one of our lovely senior devotees here in Alachua, a disciple of Srila Prabhupada who joined in Hawaii and spent 30 years in Gita Nagari. She's been in Alachua now for the last 10 years. She's the office manager for the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium currently. She's done numerous services prior to that, I'm sure, that we'll learn all about. I have to say, Mother Vegavati, even though I don't know her that well, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about her story today, she's always treated me, and I'm sure everybody else in this community, like family. She has such a warm, loving attitude and a beautiful smile anytime we run into her, whether it's on the temple grounds or at the park or wherever. And I just have this gut feeling that she just wants the highest good for all of us. And I'm so grateful to her for that. So welcome to the show, Vegavati Prabhu. How are you doing today?
I'm okay, thanks. I always do better when I can actually see people. When you know that in the interim, when I agreed to do it, and before it came to this point, you know, when you're just living in your head, hey, you can be in quite some anxiety. But now that everybody's, you know, there's some friendly faces in front of me, it's all good. I'm happy to be.
Great, yeah, we're here amongst friends, and I actually want to preface the first question I wanted to ask you by the fact that, you know, my realization lately is that even though we have been given the basics of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness and the different processes of bhakti, there's no one way to practice Krishna consciousness, it seems. It's such an individual thing for all of us. And we each experience the journey of the soul through life in our own way, through our own set of circumstances. And it's so interesting to hear from others and get good reference points and encouragement and insight through their own experiences. So that being said, I would love to ask you to get started, if you could tell us a little bit about your early journey to Krishna consciousness. What are perhaps some of the events in your life that may have brought you to the search for God and self-realization?
Thank you. Thanks, Namamrita. Yeah, it's definitely an individual thing. Sometimes I hear devotees telling about their childhood, how ever since age 5 or something, they were looking for God. I wasn't like that at all. I was, I'd have to say, lived in suburbia. Yeah, there's my childhood self, and my house growing up, and my mother and my young father long before I met him. But no, I lived in a suburban lifestyle. Was all about externals. I was the only one of 4 girls who had to have a leather sweater. I in high school, just I'd say the most materialistic person in my family. Just that's how I think I probably was. But I was the youngest, and it so happened that my mother passed away during my senior year of high school. So my 2 oldest sisters were married. My sister next was away in college. So I was the only one home with my father. And he really did fall apart. So I didn't really get to grieve. I just had to be strong for him. And I think keeping all my own feelings and emotions inside at a time like that probably helped come to a point where a couple of years later, after a couple of years in college, and then my father had remarried, and it was, you know, stepmother can be wonderful, and stepmother can be archetypical stepmother, and that's more like what it was. So when the early 70s came, and late 60s, early 70s in America, the youth counterculture, it was a good time to experiment with things. So what occurred for me was when I started experimenting, say, with drugs, I think all the pent up feelings of loss and bewilderment fully fledged themselves. And I ended up having an actual nervous breakdown. So one of the things I told Madan Gopal, my son, when I first met him, for those that don't know, I didn't give birth to him. I met him in preaching when he was 21. And I learned, oh, you're 21? Oh, I turned 21 in the nut house. So it's like, you know, it's like, then I was really looking. That's what I think led me, that the form that breakdown took was very deeply spiritual. It was centered around Christ. That's what I knew. But interestingly, when I look back, that occurred 70, 71. But in 1970, when I was in Ohio State, I remember walking across the campus and singing the song from the musical Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. I was singing it in my mind just over and over and over again. And I actually thought to myself, oh, gee, you've been singing that song for a long time. Why don't you? And I like made myself change to a different song because I didn't understand how the one I was already singing would have been. Anyway, later that same time period, I went with my then boyfriend to see on stage that rock musical, Hare. So that tune comes in a part in the play, in the drama. All the actors on stage are singing, but other people are getting up out of the audience and going on stage to sing. So I saw them and I thought, yeah, I'm going to do that too. And I got up and joined them. I went on stage and sang Hare Krishna. It was probably 20 or 30 years later that I learned that all those people in the audience were actors planted out there. But anyway, you know, so I think that Krishna saw that there's something here and the poor girl doesn't know what to do. Let me condense like 20 lives experiences into 3 months so she can realize that this material world is not a happy place. So that was, you know, part of the story that led me to actually be searching. Then I was much more interested in God and truth and eternal life. I remember at a party, someone asked me, they were talking to me, some young fellow, and I said, but what about death? And he just walked away. People weren't interested, but I was very keenly interested. So it was a couple of years later, and Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells there's 4 kinds of pious men that come to me, and one is those that are distressed. So he had very kindly arranged things to put me in some extreme distress. And then, Madhurya, so I met this person, his name was Gilbert, and he was selling incense. But I'd moved already from East Coast to West Coast. I was living in San Jose. And somehow or another, see the incense packed spiritual sky. That's an original. It's from 1972. It says so. And
it's beautiful.
I bought it from him. I bought it from Gilbert in 72. I kept buying incense from him. And he was really the first person to explain to me, yes, the life you've been living has been very sinful, but if you take to chanting Hare Krishna, all those sins will be washed away. And I believed him, and I chanted with him. He took me to his house, and there were those colorful posters that are the same pictures from the Krishna book, like Lord Brahma on the swan carrier, and Indra bathing Indra's elephant and the cow bathing Krishna with their milk, all those pastimes, colorful posters that he had as the decor in his house. He played a tape of Prabhupada. It was hard for me to understand what Prabhupada was saying, but then I heard him say, simple people chanting and dancing and eating nice food. This is spiritual life. Oh, I was so attracted. And actually from that night on, I knew that this was my path in life. It's not that there weren't stones at different times, but that was thanks for asking, Namamita.
Yeah, wow, that's really beautiful how, you kind of had that intense experience with the passing of your mom, and then it seemed like the right people kind of came along your way to bring you to that. So what is the first door that you opened? Tell us about how you actually joined eventually. How did that happen?
Well, funny enough, the same person, Gilbert, because I was living in San Jose, and then he was a friend. He would come over and give me Bhagavad Gita, give me Krishna book, teach me how to offer my food and all these things. And then one day he said, well, I'll see you later. I'm going to go to Hawaii. And I'm like, don't leave me here in this situation. It was really hellish.
Were there any other devotees there at that time? Was there a community there?
No, not at all. But
Just
interesting. Gilbert was of Mexican heritage. His hair came down to his waist. And I'll just jump ahead, because when I first moved to Alachua, I was working at Krishna.com. And I was the office manager there. So I didn't directly do sales, but sometimes I would look at the books. And so one day I happened to see there was an order from this person, Gilbert, and the same last name.
Oh,
and
really?
there was no email. And I don't know that there was a phone number, but there was an address. And so, not right away, but after a month or so, I wrote a letter and said, I don't know if you're the same person, but if you were in San Jose in 1972, if you remember a person named Helen, and if it is you, I just want to thank you very, very much. Well, he wrote me back, and he had become my godbrother. He was Prabhupada's disciple. Later on, he had gotten initiated. And he told me that, and I remembered vaguely, but he told me more detail, that he was at the airport in 1967 when Prabhupada first came to San Francisco. He was with all those people waiting. And he himself, just the way he did me, living his life not moving into a temple, but selling incense and telling people about Krishna. He had brought many people who then moved in and became, devotees, as we say. And one of them was Tripurari Swami, later became Tripurari Swami.
Really? Wow.
So, yeah.
It's wonderful. Is he, are you
so
still in touch with him now? Do you know where he is now, Gilbert?
No, we had after he wrote to me, I called him and we had one nice long talk, and that was enough.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. What a cool story of how you reconnected eventually through his order.
Right. Yeah. Who would think? Yeah. You never know.
Okay. So Hawaii.
Yeah. So when he went to Hawaii, I also went. So here we are, two young friends, hitchhiking around the Big Island. At that time on the Big Island, there was only a brahmachari farm. So we had, there were some friends that let us stay. It was very much, thanks, Acharya, you found that quote. Yeah, basically we hitchhiked around for a couple of weeks, but or I don't know how long it was, but it was at least a couple of weeks. And when the brahmacharis had Harinam on one side of the island, we'd go to that. And they'd have a feast on the other side, we'd go to that. But I could see after some time that I wanted to be more serious. Gilbert would give me instructions and I would try to follow. But when the brahmacharis, who were clearly more fixed up than he was, would try to instruct him, he didn't like it. So I just thought, okay, I want to be more serious. And so those brahmacharis on the farm asked who then was the, I guess the temple president for the islands of Hawaii. It was Gaur Sundar, who's now part of the Alachua greater community. And so he made the arrangement. I didn't meet him, but he said, yes, if you think she's sincere and serious, she can go to Kauai, where there's a temple for ladies. So when I very first moved in, it was just a ladies ashram out in the country. It was called the Hidden Temple. It was quite magical, actually. And
it was called the Hidden Temple.
Yeah. Ko'olau.
Mysterious.
And so
I like it.
Yeah, and on that island, there were brahmacharis, but they lived in the town. So on Sundays, everybody would come out to the farm where I lived and have a big feast and guitar kirtans for hours. And yeah, it was a nice beginning.
How long were you on this farm?
Yeah, that's a funny story because the temple itself was ISKCON when I moved in, but most of the people there were followers of Siddha Sarup. So about 6 months, or maybe no more, like 9 months later, he decided he didn't want to be in ISKCON anymore. So I stayed in the same place and I kept doing the same service, which by that time was tending a big vegetable garden. And we had a little, for the altar, there was a picture of Lord Chaitanya. So we weren't in ISKCON anymore. So I stayed there, still, chanting, following the principles, everything the same, but it wasn't ISKCON. So I was there for a couple of years and then had different adventures. At that time, I think Siddha Sarup's idea was decentralization, because it felt like he was looking right at me one time. Why doesn't some of you go and live at Valley House? Why don't you go and live? Valley House was this 81-acre property that was owned by someone in New York, but he let hippies live there. So I went and lived there, and I remember putting on a Sunday feast by myself there. It was just adventures. I went and lived in the woods for a while at the place we had to hike 8 miles to get to. But I didn't stay there long, but quite some adventures. And then not to dwell too much, because it was a long time ago. It was just how I started. Right. But then I came to the Los Angeles temple must have been in sometime maybe late 75, because I was engaged first helping Rukmini with seamstress things. I got to go to Rukmini's apartment every day and help her sew. And I'm not, I could care less about the sewing, but I loved hearing Rukmini's stories about Srila Prabhupada.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so that was a fortunate thing. And so I got initiated there in LA.
Oh.
Yeah. So this is Hawaii. Prabhupada's throwing flowers.
Okay.
And I'm just holding, I don't know whose baby that is, but they let me hold her.
That's a wonderful photograph. That's beautiful.
So tell us about the first time you met Srila Prabhupada. That was in Hawaii?
Yeah. The first several times, most of the times that I saw him was in Hawaii. I will tell you about the very first time because
Yes, please.
I remember watching him walk into the temple room, and the Vyasasans in the back of the room and the Panchatattva deities are in the front, and the doors on the side. So he came in the door, walked up to see the Panchatattva and pay his respects, and then walked back to the Vyasasan. And the whole time I was watching him, I was thinking, he's not in time. Somehow I got the sensation that he, unlike the rest of us, he's not stuck in time. Some people say it appeared that he was floating.
Yeah.
To me, it had to do with time. And then he went and sat on the Vyasasan. And the very first thing he did when he sat down was he looked at his watch. And that just, it was just so great. It was like transcendental comedy.
That's really special. I really like that experience of not stuck in time. Yeah, it brings an interesting perspective on a pure devotee.
Right. Yeah. It's funny enough, just this morning I'm reading in third canto, Lord Kapila's teachings to his mother. And the verses I was reading was about how even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, at the end of Brahma's lifetime, they have to go into the body of Mahavishnu and then come back at the next cosmic manifestation. But those that are pure devotees go beyond to the spiritual world where time has no influence. So Prabhupada's actually a resident from that world.
Right. How was the your initiation process? Was that in person with Srila Prabhupada, or was it through a letter?
Well, that was in LA. Prabhupada had come. That was his last visit to LA in 1976 in June. Prananda also got initiated with me. And those who have spent time in Vrindavan, Vidya and Bhakti Siddhanta, I think they got second that day. It was a big ceremony. Prabhupada had been there for a week lecturing and was expected to do the initiation, but it was scheduled for a Saturday morning. And apparently early in the morning, one of his servants told him, Srila Prabhupada, there's Ratha Yatra in Chicago today. If you go now, you can be at the Ratha Yatra.
Oh, Krishna.
And so we had Hridayananda Maharaj performed the sacrifice, and
Wow.
he acted as the Ritvik for Srila Prabhupada at that ceremony. Yeah.
Wow, that's a nice story too. So you went from Hawaii to LA, and how long were you there altogether?
I hate to say it, but it's a little bit vague. Well, I know that I left LA probably in the summer of 77. We already had gotten a letter about these people will be guiding. And because I'd had like probably at least 3 years influenced by the Siddha Swarup anti-ISKCON propaganda, I thought, I don't want to be here. There's going to be fighting. I'm just going to go. I went back to Hawaii. But I want to tell you that my service in LA, although I started off sewing with Rukmini, it wasn't long before they realized that I was outgoing and might be able to do book distribution. So yeah, I did. I started, did different kind. I remember doing book distribution in the airport with some of the big distributors. My first service was to follow Jadharani around and give her massage.
Oh, wow.
She had, yeah. and
While
that
she was distributing books?
She was distributing books, but she had a bad back, which turned out, I think, to be kidney problems, but she would get fatigued. And so we'd go into, the ladies' room or something, and I'd give her a massage and then back rub or something. And then I got to do that for all the ladies book distributors. And then at some point they gave me a book bag, and I was there. So airport book distribution, traveling sankirtan. The weird thing is, the things we've been through, I was wondering, what am I going to talk about? Because it's only an hour, and probably 48 years of different activities,
Right.
But I mean, funny enough, when I was under temple authorities, most of my service was like collecting money, selling books. But I can remember, actually, when I was part of the LA temple, I remember working a football game in Miami. I mean, like, why? It was a little bit nuts. The whole movement was very, very much in the mode of passion. But when I think about it, I think, well, Srila Prabhupada looked at what he had to work with.
Yeah.
He had tried in India, give me your son. No, he wants to become a doctor and engineer. But, he came to America, and there were all these people that were like fried with the opulence, and the superficiality, and were willing to do whatever. But very much we had a lot of passion. So send them out and do whatever your managers tell you. He had a lot going on, but the managers were also in the mode of passion. So go here, go there. There was a lot of that.
Yeah. So you're right. We only do have an hour, and so I'm gonna try to accelerate through a few points. One is, you mentioned your son Madan Gopal. I would love to hear about that story, and also you did spend 30 years in Gita Nagari. So maybe you could maybe give us a little bit of a summary of what you got out of those 30 years, and then tell us about this. It sounds like something kind of special, because you said he's not your son, but you're calling him your son. Right. And I know he's a very cool devotee, so I want to hear all about that.
Yeah. Okay. So when I moved, I had been in Hawaii. Then I came to the Baltimore temple first, and that was like towards the end of '79. So I'd been practicing Krishna consciousness already for like 6 or 7 years. And that's where, Baltimore temple at that time had a very powerful collecting party. Mother Svarga was in charge of the ladies, and there was also a men's group. We did some traveling around. But then most of the party, anyway, at some point, I think it was 82, I was donated to Gita Nagari to be part of their traveling sankirtan party. So
you must have been like one of the top cards to get donated to Gita Nagari. I know I've heard that a lot, that devotees would kind of get traded around.
Yeah, but it was, that's just how it was. But anyway, so then when I was at Gita Nagari, at first, you could say I moved to Gita Nagari, but what I did was I joined the party that was out on the road traveling. And we were selling paintings, I think. In Baltimore, we were selling those carved candles but at Gita Nagari, we were selling paintings. And this, yeah, there's me and Svarga sitting at a picnic table. This is traveling sankirtan. By that time, they had a big motorhome for the ladies to use. It had special shelves for the paintings and different vans that went out. So we would go from city to city and go to different neighborhoods. But the thing is, I at least, I was enlivened to do it. At Gita Nagari, at that time, they had all these working oxen that would work the fields. There was a school, a 2-room schoolhouse that, you know, the older kids would be in with the younger kids. So people learned at their own rate. I think the school itself won awards. The cows definitely won prizes for their milk at the state farm. There were about 100 devotees, I think. And even though at that time it was the zonal system and Satsrup Maharaj was there, and there were a good number of his disciples, there were more Prabhupada disciples there than his disciples. So it might have been a little microcosm of how Alachua is now. Yeah, but yeah, so at Gita Nagari, I didn't mind for some time going out to bring money in. But at some point, I think maybe 86 or thereabouts, a little after, it was a phenomenon I noticed all over the world that devotees that had been doing that collecting were no longer enlivened to do it. So,
such an austere activity. I know my mother has shared with me, just to be out there at, stoplights, and that's, I can't imagine. I can't even imagine what it's like to do that work.
Right. Yeah. Well, we were selling something by then, but still it was all undercover and you didn't really preach per se. So, it's funny because we felt like the farm was so exemplary, but we were just looking back the other day about all the kids that went to school there. And most of them did not stay in Krishna consciousness as active people. Maybe they consider, oh, Krishna's my God. And so I think that, it's a young movement. It was very much pioneer stage. And that was, I think, in many ways, the 80s were the era of errors.
Right.
And I think I see kids growing up in Alachua where most people have some kind of business or job. We were collecting to support a whole community, but the people that were living there weren't doing anything to earn money. So for a kid growing up, it's like, what kind of future do you see for yourself? It's like, anyway, so that at some point, Svarga, had been my sankirtan partner, and then the temple had given us a place to live when we came back. And then they said, well, we want to sell all these outside properties. So we just bought the place where we were living. Nanda was living with us at the time. But so we were there, and the 80s was one. Svarga and I had a place a couple mile drive from the farm, and when it stopped being temple property and started being our house, Nanda was living with us. I'm just mentioning that because he's an old dear friend. Right, exactly. Yeah, so I'm just so then what I was saying was when the money basically fell out from under the bottom, all the householders with children especially had to move away and get jobs. Right. So what was left at Gita Nagari were, I think, about 13 deities, about 8 to 10 devotees on the property, and whoever happened to live outside, and about 200 cows and oxen.
Wow.
So the next 10 years were quite austere on the farm. And wonderful festivals. That Radha Damodara, for some short period of time, some few months, I got to dress them and those pictures. And but the wonderful Gita Nagari has its own simplicity. and they would have country style Rath Yatra, and people would come from all the surrounding temples, the city, Washington, Baltimore, like that. So festival time was great. But during that 10-year dry period, I think the main attraction would be like twice a year, maybe Memorial Day and Labor Day weekends. Romapad Swami would have retreats. So then you'd get an influx of 80 people and all these wonderful lectures.
I've been to a few retreats in Gita Nagari, maybe some 10 years ago or so. And
that's different.
I'm sure it's very different, but that's the little bit of exposure I got to at least the grounds, and it really it feels like a very special place for sure.
Right. So you see now in this picture, then Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj came.
Of course, Bhakti Tirtha Swami.
He came, and so after the 10 years of only like mostly dry time, but there was a sweetness, but then all of a sudden there were all these wonderful devotees, and especially once a year there'd be a festival with marriages and baby namings and initiations and so many things. And so Rath Yatra, I mean, the festivals were fantastic when he was there. We got to meet so many wonderful devotees, Krishna Nandini, there's Kartamisha in the picture, so many, and he brought people to the farm to help.
So this this became his base at the time.
Yes.
And how often would he be there during those years?
Oh, he traveled a lot, of course, but he'd come back periodically, and again, it felt like it was his home when he was there. Such a dynamic preacher. So that was another era.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, you had initially asked me about Madan Gopal, and I didn't exactly.
No, I was just letting you finish the Gita Nagari part, and we can definitely want to hear about.
Well, he's part of it because.
Okay.
Yeah, so Svarga and I had, been traveling sankirtan partners, and we share a lot in common, sense of humor and love of nature, and like to preach. We worked well together. So after it was actually her idea. We used to do. This is too much to tell in too little time, but at some point she had this strong drive to develop some outreach program in Penn State University. State College was about an hour away, and so she got it started, and we were doing it together, and then that's where we met Madan Gopal. He was a grad student there, and we met him at the programs, and we had both a Bhagavad Gita reading group or study group and also a vegetarian cooking class. We were able to use the facilities at Penn State University for the first couple of years. And so he was already chanting. He grew up in Nairobi, but he used to, I think all his cousins used to watch British cartoons, and he watched American cartoons. So there was something American underneath. So anyway, he invited us to have the Bhagavad Gita discussion group in his apartment. So we shifted it to there when the university wasn't available anymore. And after a few months knowing him, he told me since we first spoke, he felt very strongly that I was his spiritual mother and would I would accept him as my son. So that, it totally worked out because, I'd always wanted children, but I wasn't married. So what are you going to do? And Krishna sent me a son, and it was the first time he had lived apart from family members in his whole life. So, and they weren't supportive of his Krishna consciousness. So for him, he got, a spiritual mother, and I got a spiritual son.
Wow.
And that relationship has, gone on. I now have a grandson who's just started college during COVID.
Wow.
And Manasi's there getting initiated by Sachinan, his wife. So yeah.
That's so beautiful. I'd never heard of that before. To officially ask someone, will you be my spiritual mother, and for you to accept him as your spiritual son. Is that something that Madan Gopal Prabhu, feel free to unmute yourself. Had you heard of that being done somewhere before? Where did that come from that you felt inclined to actually ask in such a way, will you become my spiritual mother?
No, it wasn't so much that, I mean, I just came right out and told her that I feel that we have this connection. I feel that, I get so much nourishment from you in the spiritual aspect, and I felt a resonance, like, how sometimes Krishna directs the wanderings and we meet special souls, and there's certainly something very amazing that happens when we meet the person where we have a great spiritual resonance, and I felt that I can tell her everything that's on my mind, and she is also very transparent and open and loving and welcoming. Right. So I figured, I can express to her. Actually, Masi Ganga is here too. She's joined us, and she's probably curious to find out what's going on. About my mother-in-law, but no. So then I was going through some stuff myself in college. I had this car. I was driving. I have a nice car, and I park it in my apartment. And then one day I come down, and some hooligans had vandalized the car, and they'd written some very racist things on it with the KKK sign, and scratched all over it, and say "Go back." Wow. So I was going through some stuff myself, because away from my home, away from my family, and alone. I didn't have a roommate or anything either, and so I was telling her, hey, I'm going through some stuff. It's kind of scary being in the middle of Pennsylvania like this, and
wow.
But and because I felt so much a sense of protection and care, and don't worry, everything will be fine, and there's so much depth coming from there. So it was a natural approaching that. I think this is something that I want to tell you, that I feel like you're my mother, and I feel very protected on the social family kind of atmosphere, but also on a very spiritual level.
Right.
And since that point, we've been in touch very much. I used to talk on the phone all the time. Her and Mother Svarga both, and Mother Kalini, all three of them actually. And because all three of them were coming to my apartment state college. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj also came a couple of times, and so it's like a whole family. But
wow.
So that's how it started. And a lot of adventures since then too.
Right. Well, thank you so much for exemplifying very practically that we really are a spiritual family. And I actually feel with so many devotees, sometimes, yes, this parental ras, like I actually mentioned about you, Mother Vegavati, in the beginning, you're so loving. And even though I don't know you so well, I feel like Prabhu, this motherly affection that you give off. And so Madan Gopal Prabhu, thanks for, just making it okay for us to, openly feel that way and to share, our loving feelings for one another as a devotional family. That's beautiful.
I actually suspect that it's not as uncommon. It's just that probably people, ladies especially, who do a lot of outreach, probably have many people that feel like they're the mother. But because my outreach is quite limited, and I just got, one powerful son, I'm like, okay, this is enough. That's what I can handle, But I think the feelings back and forth are quite natural.
Right.
In that way.
Right.
It is, to me, it seems like this is a key to staying strong and deepening our Krishna consciousness, are these real relationships where we can feel sheltered by somebody who is a mother figure or a father figure or a son or a daughter figure to us, and we could give that love and reciprocation to each other. It seems to be sort of a missing link. I feel like if we become under-inspired, that we need those relationships, those loving exchanges. It's so beautiful to be here with both of you tonight and to see that.
So
I want to mention also, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Well, I had mentioned that Svarga and I had lived together for many years. And so we went through also many different things together that like traveling in Vrindavan, but like having one person that you actually live with, that's not a, like a romantic relationship. You still have to go through all the kinds of purification that, no, I want to do it this way. Oh, no, I want to do it that way. It's like what people go through in a marriage. Right. Friends that knew us said, I think you've gone through all the purification, but I learned, or I'm still learning, definitely don't have it down, but I think the allowing vulnerability to come in one relationship then allows me much more easily to trust in all relationships. I have, so many lady friends that have given me strength and shelter over the years. And I think having one close friend helps that also to occur.
Yeah, that's a great point. If we can find that partner in Krishna consciousness, whether it is a husband and wife situation or a devotee that you serve with, and to be able to go through those phases of what a relationship takes to maintain, but we have the Krishna in the center factor to help us through it, that seems like an important part of one's spiritual journey. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Mother Svarga and that you both spent so much time together. It reminds me of, there's other dynamic duos of lady devotees. I'm thinking of Jamuna Devi and Mother Dina Tarini. And
oh, sure.
So it seems like it's a good practice to have a partner.
Right. Yeah. It helps. It definitely helps. And
are there any like a particular adventure the two of you had throughout the years that you could share, in your service, or any particular stories that come to mind?
Svarga, you're there. Is there something you want to? I can tell about it if you. We did rainbow gatherings. Oh, Acharya says, tell about some of your times in Vrindavan. Oh yeah, and that's the thing. Svarga got in the 90s. She got to be going pretty much 6 months out of every year. She would go and spend time in Vrindavan. And I went once for 6 months, but I also went once for 3 months, once for 2 months. So, we both had, there's Manasi, that was right after they got married. Madan Gopal's wife is there with me. Right after they got married, they came to Vrindavan and I met them there. So Jagat Tarini took us around Radhakund. We went around Govardhan and also around Vrindavan. And so instead of a honeymoon, they took a pilgrimage and I got to also be there for that. So yeah, Vrindavan was wonderful. When we just lost Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu, the other day, Ayendra's passing came as a shock. You think these people will always be there. They're like part of the scenery at Vrindavan. But of course, none of us are here forever. We're all gonna leave. But the place, all the classes we heard, all the parikramas, Svarga worked in the VIHE office. I got to proofread a book for Borijan while I was there, and still have long-term friendships with Brajabihari and Ananda Vrindavan. Like that, these Vrindavan experiences go so deep.
Right. So could you tell us a little bit about what brought you to Alachua eventually, and what the last 10 years of your life have been?
Yeah, what brought me, it's hard to say exactly, but I'd been feeling for quite some time that it was time to move from Gita Nagari. And Svarga kept saying, why not Alachua? That's like the natural thing. And I would, no, it's too big. There's too many groups of people and I'll be left out. And that does happen. Sometimes it's inevitable.
Right.
But I was thinking Potomac, talked to Rukmini and Anutama. It almost worked, but it didn't work. But I got to attend a communications conference in Belgium that was quite wonderful. But coming to Alachua was great. I drove down, I said, I'm gonna find a job and I'm gonna find a place to live. And within a week, I had been offered a job at Krishna.com, and Rasalila invited me to share the house she was living in Gainesville. And then mostly I've been able to work with devotees, for devotees, and since I've been here, and I'm very, very, very grateful for that. And it's funny because I was thinking so many of my old Gita Nagari friends are down here now. And people.
There's a good reason.
Yeah, actually, even the people I go to the springs with, it was, a couple of old Gita Nagari friends that had that happening already, going down the river every Sunday morning.
I wanted to ask you about this actually, because it seems I've seen your posts about spending time on the river through the years, and I also love nature, and I find so much nourishment from it. It seems almost like a spiritual practice for you. Is that the case?
Well, that's an interesting concept. Well, call it a sub-religious principle. I mean,
come on.
It's not exactly hearing and chanting, but it's definitely remembering Krishna, and to be, when you think how healthy it is to drink spring water,
yes,
just to immerse yourself in the springs,
yes,
or in the a river that's spring fed, that's pretty wonderful. I just think it's super healthy. And Prabhupada said, first health, then sadhana, then preaching. So, health is important. It's about the only exercise I get, but it also is very rejuvenating. I was feeling nervous today, so Svarga goes, let's go to the springs.
Exactly.
We're sorry we made you nervous.
Everybody that does.
I could have used a trip to the springs with you.
Too far away. Oh, that's what I was remembering though. When Svarga moved down here, it was about 5 years ago. And right when she first came, I happened to notice that you, Amrita Kelly, had posted, we're having kirtan sunset on Jacksonville Beach. And you said it's starting at 6. And I think she and I saw the post at about 4. And I told her about it. She said, you want to go? And this is where she's like super spontaneous. And I'll go, yeah. So we drove, we joined your sunset kirtan. And if I'm not mistaken, that was maybe the first time Leela Kishore had come to the.
I was just thinking that those were the magical days before when I had just met my husband, my future husband.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. It was the very day, in fact. So
yeah.
So if going down the river is a sub-religious principle, would you tell us a little bit about what is your daily practice? I know you mentioned when we connected a little bit. Yes, you mentioned you have a book holder on your kitchen table. Tell us a little bit about all that.
Yeah, a friend gave me that as a hostess gift one day when she came for lunch, and I've been using it ever since. I have low blood sugar, so a friend once commented, you make little offerings all day long. But I often eat alone because Svarga doesn't get hungry as often. So whenever I eat alone, I put a book in the book stand and I read. Or when I'm at work and I take my lunch, I'm on computer on the database. And I just find reading Prabhupada's books is so, it's so nourishing and so needed and so helpful and so inspiring. I know some people want to read so many pages a day, and that's fine for them. Sometimes for me, I'll just read the same purport again and go, oh my God, those two sentences there together, they're just like so deep. And if I'm, I'm reading a book, but I'm like, oh, I wish I, when I'm on my computer that I can cut and paste it and share it on Facebook, because Prabhupada just says so many amazing and wonderful things. So, yeah.
So reading Prabhupada's books is a big part of your daily sadhana.
Well, it's a daily part of my sadhana. If you say big, time-wise, it probably isn't all that much. But I try to hear the Bhagavatam class every day, mostly remotely nowadays. But and of course, with this pandemic, there's so many wonderful opportunities on Zoom. I've heard so many wonderful speakers. But yeah, I have two different reading groups I'm part of in the evenings, and I just find it's a nice way to connect. Who would be here in this movement if we didn't have Srila Prabhupada's books?
Right. Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. For myself, I come from a family of readers, but I'm not a reader myself, and but I do manage to connect every now and then. But it's just helpful for me to hear over and over from senior devotees how much just reading the Bhagavatam, reading Prabhupada's books is what sustains them. And for me, it's very much a practice. I don't do it naturally. It's something I have to really make myself do it.
Well, Namamrita, there are people that read out loud, and you can subscribe to it, or you find, and listen, because you have such a busy life, and even, but you might be able to make that fit better. Right. To hear audio books, people reading even the purports they read.
Yeah.
I also feel really encouraged by quality over quantity, because like you mentioned about, a certain number of pages in a day, I've always seen that sort of as like a marker of success. Like, oh, I read a whole chapter today or whatever. But hearing this, I feel like if I can marinate in one verse and one purport and maybe even read it 4 or 5 times, then I could get something out of it and be present in the moment in Srila Prabhupada's words right there in a way that is inspiring, and also like not so much in the mode of passion for me, to try and just blast through because I feel like I have catching up to do all the time. I really love that.
Right. Oh, good.
Because
I'm glad.
Didn't Srila
and if you can
go ahead, Prabhu.
If you can, digest one verse or one purport or a couple sentences together, then you have something you can share. Because it's guess what I read today, and it's natural because it's not like, oh, I'm supposed to tell somebody what I read today. It's because you let yourself absorb it.
I've shared many things that you've posted and found them to be super helpful for me also. I was just taking a peek at your Facebook page, and again, and it looks like you reposted something that you had shared a couple years ago, and you said it's still valid, thank God. Is it okay if I read it really quick? Okay.
Sure, of course.
It's a quote. It says, "A sober person, a devotee of the Lord, accepts only a person's glories and not his or her faults. For flies seek sores, whereas honeybees seek honey. It is a qualification of a devotee that he or she never sees others' faults." And this was someone else's post that you had liked. And I feel like it's so appropriate not only for our mission with this podcast, but also as you as a person, Prabhu, like Namamrita was saying, as far as the details of our personal lives, we haven't shared so much, but we have this very strong feeling from you that you really do see and magnify the good qualities in other people. And it seems like that's a very, very important point that you want to, like an important mood that you want to sort of imbibe and also encourage in our movement. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think you said it. I mean, I want to imbibe it. People who live with me and know that I have low blood sugar, I can tell you that too often I've used the excuse for my sharp-tongued comments by saying, "Oh, I'm hungry." So I know I've hurt many people over the years by saying things when I wasn't in the right mood. And then I read something or see a post about how, once those words are out, you can never bring them back. There's nothing you can do. And so I try to eat when I'm hungry now instead of saying mean things to people. I've gained some weight, but hey, I have long-lasting friendships. What can I say?
It's beautiful.
But Ma, that is one of your more endearing qualities. I just want to make a point here that your radical sense of transparency and honesty, even in so form, and that is something that anybody can perceive right away. And that's what I want to be, at that level of honesty, transparency, and that's genuine humility. And that's why it resonates so much. And I remember, if you recall, I told you years ago, there's nothing you can possibly do that can make me stop loving you. And I meant it. It's because I felt that, you come from a place of sincere purity, that you want to make spiritual advancement. And I told myself, I want to be like my mother, and I want to be like her. And even, sometimes it's said familiarity breeds contempt, but the more I've gotten to know you, Ma, the more respect and love I've developed. And that's because of this, it's progressive Krishna consciousness. The purification, keep moving forward, smile through the difficulties. And that is what I've learned from you, and I hope to continue learning more.
Well, that's just really sweet of you. And of course, I remember you saying that because it went deep in my heart. I want to mention that I had not taken second initiation when I came to the Baltimore and Gita Nagari area. So I took second initiation from Satsvarup Maharaj, and I read many, many of his books. And some of them have, imprinted themselves in my mind and heart. And at one place in one of the poetry books, he had this little set, it just said so many words. The essence is, please let me love you. Please let me serve you. And I pray that prayer to Krishna sometimes, just please let me love you. Please let me serve you. I don't have qualifications. I'm not at the temple every morning at Mangalarti. There's so many people that are, really good with their sadhana. I struggle, but I just keep trying. And I'm very, very grateful for all the wonderful devotees and the Dham and the holy name and, all the things that we've been given.
Well, thank you so much. I think this is a good place to come to a conclusion. I just want to kind of reiterate what I've taken away from this discussion. First of all, how you came to Krishna consciousness and how the kind of the milestones of your earlier years were springboards for you to kind of come to the journey with the passing of your mom and kind of the people that came into your life, and how you met Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for sharing those stories about your initiation and your service throughout the years, and the austerity that the service was in the 80s. I mean, I agree. You know, you call it that those are the years of error, but for me, they're also the years that for me exemplify the dedication of all of you. You know, the first generation devotees, that you were willing to be out on the streets and just go through so much austerity for serving Prabhupada. I find that just so inspiring, and I'm always in awe when I hear those stories. And I'm thinking about when we talked prior to this interview with you. You were saying, you know, I don't know what I'm going to be able to share, referencing some of the devotees that we've interviewed prior. But it's all come out so clearly, especially with your son here present, that it's just your loving heart, and just you exemplify so many of the qualities that devotees are seeking to get, just getting to that place of love and kindness and seeing the good in people. And just thank you for your honesty about, you know, you say you're still struggling with your sadhana. God, that helps me so much to hear a senior devotee say that, you know, that it's always going to be a struggle. And that's just, it's the dedication and the desire to keep going. That's what's important. So thank you for saying that as well.
Oh, my pleasure, or something. Think nothing of it.
And are there any final thoughts that you would like to share with our listeners?
No, I'm very grateful that you are doing this, because Amrita Kelly mentioned to me in the very short conversation we had before that as you folks are doing these interviews, she's feeling more drawn to, you know, think of maybe we could live in Alachua, because it feels like family. So I think because it's such a big community, even before the COVID hit, we hardly can get to know one another. Yeah. But doing, you know, person by person, it probably won't ever be that each person, but if we get a sampling, oh, here's some people, and okay, you get to know someone a little bit more, because this is we're all hankering. What is it? To love and be loved. That's what life is for.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. And yes, we do want to reach as many of our congregation members as we can, and showcase every single devotee in New Ramanreti. You know, everyone is special.
That'd be awesome. That'd be great.
That's our goal. It really is.
Yeah, cool.
Well, thank you for
Good
the
luck.
encouragement.
Okie dokie. Hare Krishna.
Don't leave us yet, Vegavati Prabhupada.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I also just have to add, I took a couple of notes. Something that I'm taking away from this is that, you know, my coming into Krishna consciousness story is also important. You know, we were talking about that, you know, sometimes it just, you know, devotees come in, it seems like they were primed from birth, and others of us came in, you know, full of all kinds of backstory. And all of us are equally welcome and have equal opportunity to really blossom into who we really are. And I appreciate so much that you sharing that, because it resonated deeply with me. Another thing was that life is long, and we have life is short, but also life is long. We have all of these chapters and these adventures, and who can know what's waiting for us. And I feel like you really tapped into sort of that concept when you mentioned timelessness, the timelessness of Srila Prabhupada, that when we're in association with Prabhupada through the practice and through the devotees, we have a taste of that timelessness, in the sense that we get to serve in so many different ways and around so many different people. And it just keeps sort of getting better. And lastly, you know, to focus on the goal positively, no matter if we have those rocks or those stumbles, you know, that you had mentioned we might have. And I think realistically, we all do. As someone who's new in Krishna consciousness, relatively speaking, that is really, really important to hear. and to focus on the good in other people and to constantly pull that out of each other. Because what more do we want than to be seen as, to not be seen for the spots that we have, but for the moon, you know?
Totally.
So thank you for seeing us. Thank you. So with that, if it's okay, I'll introduce our next episode.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
cool.
Just real quick, I just want to read two of the comments because I do want to
Oh,
acknowledge.
yes,
I want to
yes.
acknowledge, everybody that's out there in the internet world and who's listening. Thank you so much for being here and for your comments. Acharya Prabhu mentioned earlier that Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu told him that if you have one qualified son, you don't need to have any more children. So, and Adi Gopi says, "Please let me love you. Please let me serve you."
Oh, Jai. Oh, I love it.
And there's other lovely comments that you're welcome to check out afterwards. So thank you again, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Vegavati Prabhu. In an effort to continue interviewing more and more devotees, we're doing pre-recorded interviews, and we are going to be posting them the halfway point of each month. So coming up on Wednesday, June 16th, Namamrita is going to have an interview with Mukunda Michael DeVille, who is a Hollywood director, as well as a devotee who joined ISKCON. I'm not sure how long ago, but he's living in Alachua with his family and his children, and I'm sure it's going to be a very exciting interview. So
tune in.
Stay tuned for that. That'll be number 10. Lucky number 10. We made it to 2 hands.
Haribo.
Complete. 2 hands complete.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Vegavati Prabhu. Jai
Hare
Prabhupada.
Haribo, thank you.
Hare
Radhe Shyam.
Haribo.
Krishna, all of that.
Hare